I knew something was wrong the second I saw my daughter get out of that squad car. Violet didn't walk like herself. She didn't look at me. The sheriff buttoned his uniform shirt slowly, grinning at me through the windshield like he'd just done me a favor. That's when I smelled it on her. His cologne mixed with her fear. My hands didn't shake. They never do. But my heart. It stopped beating like a man's. It started ticking like a clock on a bomb. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I'd been under the hood of a '72 Chevy for 3 hours when I heard the cruiser pull into my driveway. The engine had a specific rumble. Crown Vic, probably a police interceptor. I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped out of my garage into the late afternoon sun. Sheriff Grant Holloway sat behind the wheel, sunglasses on, arm hanging out the window like he owned the whole county. Which, to be fair, he kind of did. He'd been sheriff for 8 years. Untouchable. Loved by the old folks. Feared by everyone else. But what made my blood run cold wasn't him. It was Violet in the passenger seat. My daughter. 17 years old. Honor roll student. Volleyball captain. The kind of kid who still hugged me goodnight. She got out slowly. Too slowly. Her hair was messy. Her shirt was buttoned wrong. And her eyes? God, her eyes were somewhere else entirely. Afternoon, Mason, Grant called out, that good old boy smile plastered on his face. Found this one walking on Route 9. Gave her a lift home. You should talk to her about hitchhiking. Dangerous world out there. I didn't respond. I was looking at Violet. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Violet, I said softly. She flinched. Actually flinched at my voice. Grant chuckled. Teenagers, am I right? Anyway, you folks have a blessed evening. He tipped his hat, backed out of the driveway, and drove off like nothing had happened. Violet stood there, frozen, staring at the gravel. Baby, I said, stepping closer. What happened? Nothing. Violet, I said nothing. Her voice cracked. Then she ran inside. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the dust cloud Grant's cruiser left behind. My instincts were screaming. I'd spent 15 years in Marine Special Operations. I'd hunted men in the dark. I'd learned to read body language in war zones where a wrong move meant death. And every single alarm in my head was going off. I gave her an hour. Then I knocked on her bedroom door. Vi, I'm coming in. She was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. I sat down next to her. Didn't say anything. Just waited. That's when I noticed the bruise on her wrist. Faint, but there. Finger-shaped. Who did that? I asked quietly. She pulled her sleeve down. Nobody. Violet. Dad, please, look at me. She finally did. And the second our eyes met, she broke. Tears poured down her face, and her whole body started shaking. I pulled her into my arms, and she sobbed into my chest like she was 5 years old again. He pulled me over, she whispered. Said my taillight was out. He told me to get in the squad car. Said he'd drive me home. I thought it was okay. He's the sheriff. My jaw tightened. What did he do? She couldn't say it. But she didn't have to. I felt her trembling. I saw the shame in her eyes. I smelled his cologne still clinging to her shirt. He said if I told anyone, he'd say I seduced him. He said no one would believe me. He said, she choked on the words. He said I was lucky he was being gentle. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just held her while she cried. But inside, something very old and very cold woke up. After Violet fell asleep, I went down to the basement. In the back corner, behind a false wall I'd built years ago, was a gun safe. I hadn't opened it in 8 years. Not since I left the teams. I punched in the code. The door hissed open. Inside were things I'd promised myself I'd never use again. Night vision optics. A suppressed M4. Ballistic plates. A go bag with 3 fake IDs. And a slim black folder marked classified. I didn't take any of it. Not yet. Instead, I pulled up the security footage from my driveway camera. I rewound to when Grant's cruiser pulled up. I watched him open the passenger door. I watched Violet stumble out. I watched him adjust his belt and smile. And I watched him mouth something to himself as he drove away. I ran it back. Enhanced the audio. Lip-reading software I'd installed years ago for surveillance work decoded it. Dumb bastard has no idea. I sat back in my chair and smiled. He was right. I wasn't the man he thought I was. I wasn't Mason Webb, small-town mechanic and single dad. I was Sergeant Major Mason Webb, Marine Force Recon. 15 years deep cover and direct action. They called me Ghost because I could be anywhere, anytime, and you'd never see me coming. Grant Holloway thought he was untouchable. He had no idea he'd just declared war on a dead man. I picked up a burner phone from the safe. Dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It rang twice. Yeah, a gruff voice answered. It's Ghost, I said. I need a favor. There was a pause. Then, thought you were out. I was. What changed? I looked at the freeze frame of Grant's smirk on my screen. Someone touched my daughter. Another pause. Then, what do you need? Everything on Sheriff Grant Holloway. Financials. Phone records. Dirt. And I need it yesterday. Consider it done. I hung up. Deleted the call log. Burned the SIM card. Then I walked back upstairs, checked on Violet one more time, and sat down in the dark living room. Grant thought this was over. It hadn't even started. 48 hours after Grant dropped Violet off, I walked into the county sheriff's station at 9 in the morning. I wore clean jeans, a button-up shirt, and my calmest face. I wasn't Ghost yet. I was still trying to be Mason Webb, concerned father, doing things the right way. The dispatcher, a woman in her 50s named Paige, barely looked up from her computer. Help you. I need to file a report. Sexual assault. That got her attention. She glanced up, then scanned the empty lobby like she was checking if anyone else heard me. Who's the victim? My daughter. Violet Webb. 17. Her face softened for half a second. I'm sorry to hear that. Do you know who the perpetrator is? I paused. This was the line I couldn't uncross. Sheriff Grant Holloway. The softness died instantly. Her fingers froze over the keyboard. She stared at me like I'd just confessed to murder. Excuse me. Sheriff Holloway assaulted my daughter 2 nights ago. In his squad car. I have evidence. She didn't type anything. Didn't reach for a form. Instead, she picked up the phone and spoke quietly into it. 30 seconds later, a deputy appeared from the back. Tall guy, early 30s, nameplate read Deputy Ryder. Mr. Webb, come with me. I followed him into a small interview room. Gray walls, metal table, one-way mirror. He didn't offer me water. Didn't offer me a seat. Just crossed his arms and looked at me like I was wasting his time. So, you're accusing the sheriff of sexual assault. I'm reporting a crime. Right. He smirked. And you have proof? My daughter's testimony. Bruises on her wrist. Security footage showing the timeline. His DNA is probably still on her clothes. Ryder laughed. Actually laughed. Let me get this straight. Your teenage daughter claims the most respected man in this county raped her. And you expect us to just what? Arrest him? I expect you to do your job. My job, he said, leaning forward, is to protect this community from liars and troublemakers. You know how many times we get false accusations? Especially from girls who regret their choices. My hands didn't clench. I kept them flat on the table. Calm. Controlled. She's 17. She didn't make a choice. He's 46. He's got a badge and a gun. He used both. Ryder's smile faded. You need to be very careful about what you're saying, Mr. Webb. Slander against a law enforcement officer is a serious crime. You could go to jail for this. So could he. Listen. Ryder sat down across from me, folding his hands like a teacher talking to a stupid kid. I don't know what your daughter told you, but Sheriff Holloway gave her a ride home because she was hitchhiking. That's it. He was being a good Samaritan. If she's making up stories because she's embarrassed or wants attention, that's on you as a parent. I stared at him. You're not even going to investigate. There's nothing to investigate. Now, I suggest you take your daughter to a therapist and leave the sheriff alone. Because if you keep spreading these lies, we'll have no choice but to press charges against you. He stood up and opened the door. Interview over. I walked out of that station knowing exactly what I'd just learned. This wasn't incompetence. This was a cover-up. Grant owned these people. Every single one of them. I got into my truck and sat there for a long time, watching deputies walk in and out of the building, laughing, drinking coffee, living their lives like nothing was wrong. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Yeah, it's Tristan, the contact I'd called 2 nights ago. Former intel officer. Owed me his life from Fallujah. I got what you asked for. Grant Holloway's not just dirty, he's a landfill. He's been shaking down local businesses for protection money. 3 DUIs swept under the rug. 2 excessive force complaints that vanished. And get this, 4 women in the last 6 years filed reports against him. All of them disappeared from the system. Names. I'll send them. But Mason, this guy's connected. He's got the mayor, half the county council, and a state senator in his pocket. If you go after him, you're going up against the whole machine. Good, I said. Machines break. I hung up and drove back to my shop. I had an engine rebuild waiting and a daughter who needed to see her father acting normal. I couldn't let her see the rage. Not yet. But 2 hours later, a familiar Crown Vic pulled into my lot. Grant Holloway stepped out, alone this time, no uniform, jeans and a polo shirt. He walked into my garage with his hands in his pockets, looking around like he was shopping for a car. Mason Webb, he said, grinning. Heard you stopped by the station this morning. I didn't look up from the carburetor I was cleaning. That's right. Funny thing, my boys told me you were spreading some pretty wild stories. Not stories. Facts. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. See, that's where you're wrong. Facts are what I say they are. And the fact is, you're a single dad with a troubled teenage daughter who's looking for attention. That's the story everyone's going to hear if you keep talking. I set down my wrench and finally looked at him. He was standing 10 feet away, hands still in his pockets, completely relaxed. He thought he'd already won. I'm going to make this real simple for you, Grant continued. You drop this. You tell your girl to keep her mouth shut. And we all move on. Because if you don't, he stepped closer. I'll make sure Violet gets pulled over every single week. And one of those times, we're going to find drugs in her car. Funny how that happens. Then she's not going to college. She's going to county lockup. You understand me. I stared at him for a long, quiet moment. Then I smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that used to make enemy combatants talk without me laying a hand on them. I understand perfectly. Grant looked confused for a second, like he expected me to beg or threaten. But I just turned back to my work. Good, he said slowly. Glad we're on the same page. He walked back to his car, got in, and drove off. I watched him disappear down the road, still smiling. Then I whispered to myself, so quietly even the wind couldn't hear it. You just declared war on a ghost. That night, I didn't sleep. I worked. In the basement, I spread everything Tristan sent me across the workbench. Bank statements, phone records, property deeds. Grant Holloway wasn't just a dirty cop. He was running this town like his personal kingdom. I pulled up a satellite map of the county and started marking locations. Grant's house, the station, his regular routes, the diner where he ate lunch every Tuesday and Thursday, the gym where he worked out at 6 a.m., the bar where he drank on Friday nights. 15 years in force recon taught me one thing. Every target has a pattern, and every pattern has a weakness. I opened a locked drawer and pulled out equipment I'd kept from my old life. A digital scanner that could clone RFID signals, a micro camera the size of a shirt button, a cellular interceptor that could mirror any phone within 30 feet. All technically illegal for civilians to own. Good thing I wasn't planning to stay civilian much longer. By 3 a.m., I had a plan. By 4 a.m., I was moving. Grant's squad car sat in his driveway, right where it always did when he was off duty. His house was dark. I'd watched him go inside at 11 p.m. and hadn't seen movement since. I approached from the tree line behind his property, dressed in black, face covered. No streetlights back here. No cameras. He felt safe in his own kingdom. Big mistake. I reached the cruiser in 40 seconds. dropped to the ground, and slid underneath. Found the OBD2 port and plugged in a GPS tracker with a remote kill switch. If I needed to stop his car in the middle of nowhere, I could do it with one button press. Next, I planted the micro camera inside the driver's side sun visor, aimed it at the passenger seat. If he ever tried this again with another girl, I'd have video evidence from inside his own vehicle. Finally, I placed a small magnetic audio recorder under the dashboard. Voice activated. 7-day battery life. The whole operation took 4 minutes. I was back in the tree line before his neighbor's dog even thought about barking. The next day, I followed him. Not close. Not obvious. Just close enough. Grant started his morning at the station, came out at 10, and drove to a small hardware store on the edge of town. I watched from a coffee shop across the street as he walked inside. He didn't buy anything. Just talked to the owner, a man named Colin, for about 5 minutes. Colin looked nervous. Kept glancing at the door. When Grant left, Colin's shoulders sagged like he'd just survived something. I waited 10 minutes, then walked into the hardware store myself. "Morning," I said. Colin looked up, still pale. "Morning. What can I help you with? Just need some bolts. But hey, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." He forced a smile. "Yeah, just long morning." I grabbed a box of bolts I didn't need and paid cash. As I was leaving, I stopped. "That sheriff who was just here. He a regular?" Colin's face went tight. "Yeah, real regular. Seems like a good guy." "Sure," Colin said quietly. "If you pay him to be." I didn't push. Just nodded and left. But now I knew. This wasn't just about Violet. Grant was extorting local businesses. Protection money disguised as donations to the sheriff's ball or community safety funds. I spent the next 3 days mapping it all out. 12 businesses, all paying Grant between $500 and $2,000 a month. Some in cash, some in checks made out to shell companies. He was pulling in over 20 grand a month. Tax-free, untraceable. And when I pulled up property records, I found something even better. Grant owned a lake house 2 counties over. Bought it for cash 3 years ago. $500,000. On a sheriff's salary of $72,000 a year. He wasn't just dirty. He was stupid. On day 5, I activated the phone cloner. I sat in my truck outside the gym while Grant worked out inside. My interceptor locked onto his phone's signal and mirrored it completely. Every text, every call, every app. I now had a duplicate of his entire digital life. I scrolled through his messages. Most of it was boring. Texts to his buddies about football. Messages to his ex-wife about child support. But then I found a thread with someone listed as Hunter. Grant, got another one lined up. Same deal as last time. Hunter, make sure she's clean. No junkies. Last girl caused problems. Grant, relax. This one's perfect. Leaves for college in 2 months. Won't talk. My blood went cold. He was planning to do it again. And Hunter was helping him. I traced Hunter's number. Took me an hour, but I found him. Hunter Boone, county mayor, pillar of the community, married, 3 kids. I leaned back in my seat and stared at the gym entrance. This wasn't just one bad cop. This was a network. That night, I sat on a hillside 1 mile east of Grant's house. I had a Remington 700 rifle with a night vision scope resting on a bipod in front of me. Wind was calm. Temperature steady. Perfect conditions. I watched Grant through the scope as he walked around his living room in a tank top, drinking a beer, watching TV. He looked relaxed, happy, untouchable. I adjusted for windage and elevation. Put the crosshairs right on his chest. My finger rested on the trigger. 1 pull, 3 pounds of pressure, and Violet would be safe. Grant would be gone. The world would be better. But I didn't pull it. Because killing him was easy. Killing him was mercy. And he didn't deserve mercy. He deserved to lose everything. His badge, his reputation, his freedom, his life, piece by piece, until he was begging for the bullet I wouldn't give him. I wanted him to feel what Violet felt. Powerless, terrified, alone. I lowered the rifle and smiled in the dark. Grant thought he was the hunter. He had no idea he was already in the trap. I didn't need to kill Grant Holloway. I needed to erase him. The first strike happened on a Tuesday morning. Grant woke up, made coffee, and checked his phone like he did every day. Except this time, his banking app wouldn't load. He tried again. Error message. He called the bank. Mr. Holloway, your accounts have been frozen pending an IRS audit. What? There's got to be some mistake. No mistake, sir. You'll receive official documentation within 48 hours. He hung up, confused but not panicking yet. He figured it was some clerical error. He had friends. He'd make a call and fix it. But I'd already made sure his friends wouldn't be answering. At 10 a.m., Grant got into his squad car and turned the key. Nothing. The engine didn't even try to start. He popped the hood, checked the battery. Everything looked fine. He called dispatch for a tow. While he waited, his personal cell phone rang. Unknown number. Yeah. Silence. Hello. Then, just before he hung up, a voice. Distorted. Mechanical. You should have left her alone. Click. Grant stared at his phone. His hand was shaking just a little. By noon, Grant was at the station, using a deputy's car, trying to get his day back on track. But his computer kept crashing. Files were missing. His passwords weren't working. Ryder walked up to his office. Boss, we got a problem. Someone filed a complaint with the state police. Anonymous tip about evidence tampering. What evidence? Those old assault cases. The ones that got dismissed. Someone sent copies of the original reports to the state AG's office. Grant's face went pale. How? Those were sealed. I don't know. But they're asking questions. Grant slammed his fist on the desk. Find out who did this. Now. That night, Grant came home to find his front door unlocked. He drew his service weapon and cleared the house room by room. Nothing. No one. But when he walked into his kitchen, he stopped cold. On his refrigerator, held up by a magnet, was a photo. A printed screenshot from his own text messages. The conversation with Hunter about another girl. Underneath it, written in red marker. I'm watching. Grant ripped it down, his hands trembling. He checked every window, every door, all locked. No signs of forced entry. Whoever did this had a key, or didn't need one. He grabbed his phone and called Hunter. We got a problem. I know, Hunter said, voice tight. Someone sent the feds my financial records. They're asking about campaign donations that don't add up. Who the hell is doing this? I don't know, but we need to shut it down. Fast. Grant paced his living room, looking out the window into the dark yard. It's got to be that mechanic. Webb. The guy with the daughter. You think some small-town grease monkey is doing this? Who else? I threatened him. Now my life's falling apart. Hunter was quiet for a moment. Then handle it. Permanently. Grant hung up and grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet. He poured a glass and drank it in one swallow. He didn't notice the tiny camera in the smoke detector above him. The one I'd installed 3 hours ago while he was at the station. The next morning, Grant's deputies started turning on him. Not openly, but I'd planted just enough evidence to make them doubt him. An anonymous email to Ryder showing discrepancies in the evidence locker logs. A text to another deputy showing Grant's offshore account numbers. Little cracks. Just enough to make them question who they were protecting. By Thursday, Grant's squad car started randomly dying in the middle of traffic. The kill switch I'd installed worked perfectly. He'd be driving, and suddenly the engine would cut out. He'd restart it, and it'd be fine for an hour. Then it'd happen again. He took it to the department mechanic. They found nothing wrong. Grant was unraveling. I could see it in the way he moved. Jumpy. Paranoid. Constantly looking over his shoulder. Good. On Friday night, I made my move. Grant went to his usual bar, O'Malley's, trying to drink away the worst week of his life. I watched from across the street as he downed 3 whiskeys in an hour. When he stumbled out to his truck at 11 p.m., he found something on his windshield. A military smoke grenade pin. The kind you pull before you throw. He picked it up, squinting at it in the dim light. It took him a second to recognize what it was. Then his face went white. He spun around, scanning the parking lot. Empty. Just him and the shadows. He got in his truck and peeled out, driving 20 miles over the limit all the way home. When he got inside, he locked every door, checked every window, and sat down in his living room with his gun on the coffee table in front of him. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but he did. "What do you want?" he said, voice cracking. The distorted voice came through again. Calm. Cold. "You're not dealing with some scared father anymore, Grant. You're dealing with someone who knows exactly who you are, what you've done, and how to make you disappear. Who the hell are you?" "I'm the last person you should have crossed." The line went dead. Grant sat there in the silence, staring at the smoke grenade pin on the table. His hands were shaking. His throat was dry. For the first time in his life, Sheriff Grant Holloway was afraid. And I was just getting started. Fear changes how a man moves. Grant used to walk like he owned the ground under his boots. Now he moved like the floor might give out any second. For a week, I watched him spiral. He started wearing his gun at home, closed his blinds at dusk, jumped at every noise. He yelled at deputies in front of civilians, snapped at Page and Dispatch. Even Ryder, his loyal lapdog, started keeping his distance. That was good, because scared men make stupid choices. And I needed him to make a very specific mistake. The mistake came on a windy Thursday night. I was in my garage, pretending to work on a transmission, when I saw the reflection of headlights glide across the wall. Not one vehicle. Two. I wiped my hands, killed the garage lights, and walked to the side window. A black pickup and a gray sedan rolled to a stop across from my shop. 3 guys got out, all in dark hoodies. Not locals I recognized. Grant didn't come himself. Coward. The tallest one lit a cigarette and pointed at my building. Another guy popped the truck's tailgate and pulled out a red gas can. So that was the plan. Intimidation had failed. Now we were at arson. I checked my watch. Right on time. They thought I was alone. They thought I'd be asleep. They thought this would be quick. They didn't know I'd seen their license plates 2 miles back on a traffic cam I'd hacked into. They didn't know I'd already traced the sedan's registration straight to a shell company tied to Mayor Hunter Boone. Grant wasn't freelancing. He was following orders. Perfect. I moved through the dark garage without a sound. Every tool was where I'd put it. Every piece of cover mapped in my head. I'd spent days prepping for this. If they wanted to burn my life down, they were going to do it from the floor. The first thug approached the side door with the gas can. He jiggled the handle, found it locked, and nodded to the others. The tall one stepped forward, pulled something from his pocket. Small pry bar, cheap metal. As soon as the bar touched the lock, the door kicked open from the inside. I grabbed his wrist, twisted, and drove his face into the doorframe. He dropped like someone cut his strings, out cold before he hit the ground. The second guy reached for his waistband. Bad call. I stepped into him, slammed my shoulder into his chest, and used his momentum to put him flat on his back on the concrete. The pistol skidded away. I planted my boot on his wrist before he could even think about scrambling for it. "Don't," I said quietly. He froze. The third one, the one with the gas, started to back away toward the truck. I called out. "You walk, I break his arm. You run, I break your legs when I catch you." He stopped. His breathing went shallow. He looked at his buddy pinned under my boot, then at the lump on the ground by the door. Who are you, man?" he stammered. "Just a mechanic," I said. "Who do you think I was?" He swallowed hard. "We were told you were soft. Just a scared dad who wouldn't fight back." "Who told you that?" He hesitated. I pressed my heel down harder on his friend's wrist. The man groaned. "They didn't pay you enough to be loyal," I said. "So here's your choice. Talk, and you all leave here breathing. Stay quiet, and you leave here in an ambulance. Or a coroner's van. Your call." The guy with the gas can cracked first. They always do. "It was Holloway," he blurted. "Sheriff Holloway. Said to scare you. Said make sure you get the message." "And who paid him?" He blinked. "What?" "The man who signs his real checks. Who gave you the job." He looked at the ground. "We don't deal with him. We deal with a guy named Preston. But everyone knows who Preston works for." "Say it." "The mayor." Hunter Boone. There it was. Out loud. I nodded. Drop the gas. Hands where I can see them. He did. I zip-tied all three of them in under a minute. Knees, wrists, ankles. Sat them up against the wall like trash bags waiting for pickup. One of them glared at me. You gonna call the cops? You think they'll help you? They work for him. I smiled. Who said anything about calling them? His bravado flickered. Look, he said, voice dropping. We were just doing a job. You know how it is. You get an envelope. You do what it says. You don't ask questions. That's your problem, I said. You should have asked who you were burning. I pulled a burner phone from my pocket, snapped a few photos of them tied up, the gas can, the truck plates, everything. Then I hit send. The pictures went to Tristan, to a secure cloud, to an encrypted folder with a dead man switch. If anything happened to me, these images, and every other piece of evidence I collected, would go to the state cops, the feds, the press. All at once. Insurance. The phone in my hand buzzed. Unknown number. Right on schedule. I answered. Yeah. A low voice came through. Not distorted this time. Calm. Confident. You handled my boys faster than expected, the man said. That training of yours doesn't fade, does it, Mason? My muscles tightened. Preston. He chuckled. He told me about you. Hunter did. The mechanic with a sealed service record. The one even some of the three-letter agencies couldn't read. They said your file was all black ink. He paused, like he was enjoying the reveal. Or do you prefer your old name? Ghost. For a split second, the world went quiet. He knew. Which meant Hunter knew. Which meant this wasn't just harassment anymore. This was chess. You've been doing your homework, I said. Had to, Preston replied. My boss doesn't like surprises. He wants to know what kind of animal he's poking with a stick. You might want to tell him to drop the stick. Preston laughed. See, that's the thing. He doesn't scare easily. Governors, judges, donors, they all bend. So when some retired war hero starts making trouble, Hunter doesn't back down. He doubles down. I looked at the three men tied against my wall. And does he know his double down just failed? He knows you're not soft, Preston said. Which means we adjust strategy. You keep pushing this. You won't like what happens next. I let the silence stretch. You already hurt my daughter, I said finally. There is nothing left you can do that I haven't prepared for. Everyone thinks that, Preston replied. Right up until they lose something they never thought was on the table. He hung up. I stared at the dead screen for a long moment. Not because of the threat. I'd heard worse from men with actual armies. But because of what he'd given me. Confirmation. Mayor Hunter Boone knew who I really was. He still chose to stand behind Grant. He wasn't just complicit. He was invested. I walked back over to the three men on the floor. I'm not going to kill you, I told them. Tonight you get a gift from me, your lives. They exchanged confused looks. But you are going to deliver a message. One of them swallowed. What message? I knelt so they could see my eyes clearly. Tell Sheriff Holloway and Mayor Boone this. I'm done warning them. I tried the law. I tried subtle. Now I'm going after everything they touch. Their money. Their partners. Their reputations. Their sleep. I held up my phone, showed them the photos. And if they come near my daughter again, there won't be cameras or evidence next time. I added. There'll just be silence. I cut the zip ties on their ankles, one by one. You can walk, I said. You try to come at me again, you don't walk away. They scrambled to their feet, half stumbling toward the truck, dragging their pride behind them. As the engines faded into the distance, the burner phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Tristan. Tristan, you sure you want to keep this quiet? I could light these guys up with one call. Me, not yet. Tristan, then what's the move? I looked at the dark road where the trucks had disappeared. Me, we stopped thinking small town. This isn't just a bad cop. It's organized power. I'm going after the head of the snake now. I put the phone away and turned off the garage lights. Grant thought sending arsonists was escalation. He had no idea all he'd done was open the next door. And on the other side of that door was something he wasn't ready for. A ghost that actually knew how to bring an empire down. By morning, The whole town felt different to me. Same streets, same faded storefronts, same people sipping coffee on the diner stools. But once you know who's pulling the strings, you stop seeing a town and start seeing a board. Pieces, lines, pressure points. Grant and Hunter thought I was just one piece on that board. They still hadn't figured out I was the guy who used to flip the whole thing. I couldn't take them down alone, though, not clean. Not in a way that would stick. I needed someone who could weaponize evidence the way I weaponized fear. So I called Natalie. She was the only lawyer I knew who scared career criminals more than prison itself. We met at a little coffee shop 2 towns over. Neutral ground, far from Hunter's network. Natalie walked in wearing a dark blazer, jeans, and a stare that could cut a man in half. She dropped a file on the table before she even sat down. "You know how many times I've told myself I'm done answering calls from ghosts?" she said. "At least 3, I replied. "Try 8. She studied me. "You look older. You look busier." "I am," she said. "So this better be worth it." I slid a USB drive across the table. "You tell me." She plugged it into her laptop, brows pulling together as she clicked through the folders. Audio recordings, photos, text screenshots, copies of reports Tristan pulled, names, dates, account numbers. Her face changed the further she went. Curiosity, then focus, then something sharper. "You realize what this is, right?" she said finally. "This isn't just a dirty sheriff. This is a racketeering case waiting to happen. Can you make it happen?" "Maybe," she said. "But this town, this state, they like their good OL boys. Hunters like Boone don't fall easy. They fall when someone pushes them off the right cliff in front of the right cameras." "I can push," I said. She shook her head. "You're thinking like a soldier. Kick the door, neutralize the targets, exfil. This isn't that. This is slow, surgical. Paper cuts until they bleed out." "Grant raped my daughter," I said quietly. "Slow is not my strong suit right now." Her eyes softened for a moment. "How's she holding up?" "Trying to pretend she's okay so I won't worry," I said. "Which makes me worry more." Natalie closed the laptop. "Here's the problem," she said. "If we go straight at them with this, they bury it. They call in favors. They paint Violet as a liar and you as an unstable veteran. I've seen this movie. They win the first act. I'm not worried about the first act." "I am," she said, "because I don't fight to lose round 1. We need someone above them. Higher jurisdiction. State or federal. Someone too far away to care about small-town politics, but close enough to hate public scandals." "So what's the play?" "We build a package they can't ignore," she said. "Financial crimes, civil rights violations, corruption, pattern of abuse. All tied together, all provable, all with your data chain documented. When we hand it over, it has to be so clean they look guilty just for hesitating." I nodded slowly. "How long? If I drop everything else?" She thought. 2, 3 weeks to make it airtight. Too long. She studied me again. "What aren't you telling me?" "They already tried to burn my shop down," I said. "Grant sent hired firebugs. And whoever Preston really is. He knows my file. Knows Ghost." Natalie's jaw clenched. "So they know they're in a fight. They think they do." She leaned back. "Then you need to keep them busy. Distract them. Make them think you're still just a pissed-off father while I build this case." I looked out the window, watching cars roll by. "Grant's not going to sit still," I said. "Fear's eating him alive. He'll go nuclear soon. Try something loud. Then we make sure when he does, it backfires," she replied. "You said something in your text. I want total destruction. You meant it. Every word." "Good," she said. "Because if we do this my way, the goal isn't revenge, Mason. It's legacy. Violet grows up in a world where his name is a warning, not a badge." She slid the USB back toward herself. "I'll be in touch," she said. "Don't kill anybody unless you absolutely have to. No promises." She gave me a look. "Mason," I sighed. "Fine. I'll try." On my way back home, a thought kept circling like a vulture. If they knew about Ghost, they'd eventually come looking for the rest. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and pulled up something I hadn't checked in years, whatever public record was left of me. Name: Mason Webb. Service: United States Marine Corps. Status: honorably discharged. Details: redacted. To anyone else, it was a blank wall. To someone like Hunter, it was a temptation. Sure enough, that night, my phone lit up with an alert from one of my silent systems. A ping on a background check query run through a government access portal. Someone at the county admin building had tried to pull my full file and hit a wall. Curious, aren't you? I murmured. I didn't have to guess who ordered it. Grant didn't even know how to spell half the forms he signed. Hunter, on the other hand, loved control. He'd want to know exactly what kind of threat he was facing. The inability to know would eat at him. That was a useful kind of hunger. I didn't have to wait long for the next move. 2 days later, a patrol car pulled up in front of my house just after sunset. Not Grant's. Ryder's. Violet was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll her phone, trying not to jump at every noise. When the blue and white rolled to a stop, she stiffened. "It's okay," I said. "Stay inside." I stepped onto the porch as Ryder climbed out. He walked up with a clipboard in hand, trying to look official and bored at the same time. He was neither. "Evening, Mr. Webb." "Deputy. Got a warrant here," he said, holding up the paper. "Anonymous tip you're storing illegal firearms. Gotta take a look around." My gaze flicked to the document. It wasn't a bluff. Judge's signature. Real stamp. They'd actually gone that far. "Anonymous tip," I repeated. "Let me guess." Caller sounded real concerned about the danger I posed to this fine community. Ryder's jaw tightened just a bit. "I don't write the complaints. I just follow orders." "Whose?" I asked. "Grant's or Hunter's?" He hesitated half a beat. That was enough of an answer. "Look, Mason," he said quietly, stepping closer. "Off the record? Drop this. Take your kid and leave. Start over somewhere else. People like Holloway, they don't lose. They just get meaner. And what happens to the next girl he pulls over?" He looked away. Didn't answer. That told me everything I needed to know about where his line was. He wasn't evil. Just a man who decided comfort was easier than courage. But comfort doesn't help my daughter sleep at night. "Search what you need to search," I said. "You won't find anything illegal." He didn't know I'd moved every sensitive piece of gear 3 nights earlier to a storage unit under a fake name 2 towns away. All he'd find here were legally owned hunting rifles and old tools. The search took an hour. Drawers opened, closets checked, attic crawled. Violet stayed in her room, door locked. When Ryder came back downstairs, he looked almost disappointed. Like I said, I told him, I'm not the criminal in this story. He folded the warrant, stuffed it into his pocket. "Maybe not yet," he said. "But you keep pushing Holloway. He'll make sure you look like one." He walked out without another word. I watched the patrol car roll away, lights off, just a normal cruiser disappearing down a normal street in a town that wasn't normal anymore. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with Violet. She picked at her food, eyes on her plate. "Is this because of me?" she asked suddenly. I set my fork down. "Is what because of you?" "The cops. Everything. If I hadn't gotten in his car—" "Stop," I said, more sharply than I meant to. Her eyes widened. I softened my tone. "You didn't do anything wrong." "He did. Every choice being made right now is about his guilt, not your existence." She swallowed. "I just feel like I broke our life." "Our life isn't broken," I said. "It's under attack. Big difference." She went quiet for a moment. "Dad," she asked softly, "are we going to be okay?" I held her gaze. I couldn't promise safety. Not the kind she meant. But I could promise something else. "We're not going to be quiet," I said. "Whatever happens, we're not going to let him turn this into your shame. It's his. All of it." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away this time. That was the first crack in the weight he'd dumped on her shoulders. Not much, but enough. After she went to bed, my phone buzzed. A message from Natalie. "Natalie, got something. You were right about the mayor. He's the spine. When we break him, Holloway collapses. Need you to hold out a little longer. Me. He's getting desperate. Her reply came fast. Natalie, good. Desperate men make mistakes. When he does, I need you to be ready to hand him to me with both hands, not just your fists. I typed back one line. Me. He's about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Because while she was building the case on paper, I could feel it in my bones. Grant was done hiding behind process. The next move he made wasn't going to be legal, subtle, or quiet. It was going to be an attack. And what he didn't understand was that some homes look soft from the outside. Until you try to break the door and realize someone on the other side spent 15 years learning exactly how to survive a siege. 3 nights later, they came for Violet. I was awake when the convoy rolled up at 2 a.m. For vehicles. No sirens, but full tactical lights cutting through the dark like knives. I watched from the upstairs window as 12 men in full gear stepped out. SWAT vests, rifles, breaching equipment. Grant stood in the back, arms crossed, watching like a general sending troops into battle. This wasn't an arrest. This was intimidation wrapped in badges. Violet stirred in her room. I walked quietly to her door. Stay in bed, I whispered. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Her eyes went wide. Dad, trust me. I locked her door from the outside, pocketed the key, and moved downstairs. They were already at the front door. A voice boomed through a megaphone. Mason Webb, this is the sheriff's department. We have a warrant. Open the door or we breach. I didn't answer. Instead, I flipped 3 switches on a panel hidden behind the kitchen cabinet. The house went dark. Every light, every appliance. Total blackout. Outside, I heard confused voices. Power's out. Did we trip something? Doesn't matter. Breach on my mark. The first mistake they made was thinking the darkness was an accident. The ram hit the door once. Twice. On the 3rd hit, it swung open. 4 men rushed in, rifle lights sweeping the entry hall. They made it 3 steps before the first flashbang I'd rigged to a tripwire detonated. The blast lit up the hallway like a lightning strike. Men shouted, stumbling back, ears ringing, vision blown. I was already moving through the house using routes I'd memorized in total darkness. No lights, no noise, just muscle memory and 15 years of close-quarters training. A deputy swung left into the living room. I stepped out from behind the doorframe, swept his legs, and pinned him face down before he could shout. Zip-tied his wrists to the radiator pipe. Stay down. You're done. He didn't argue. 2 more came through the kitchen. I'd prepped that room like a funhouse. Chairs repositioned. Loose cables at ankle height. A smoke grenade rigged to the pantry door. They triggered it. Thick gray smoke filled the room in seconds. They started coughing, shouting coordinates that didn't help because they couldn't see 2 feet in front of them. I slipped past them, grabbed one by the vest strap, and yanked him backward into the hallway. He hit the floor hard. I knelt next to his ear. This isn't a real raid, I said quietly. It's a hit job. You're being used. Walk out now or get buried with him. His breath was fast, panicked. He nodded. I cut his flex cuffs and pointed to the door. He scrambled out. Upstairs, boots pounded toward Violet's room. I was faster. I came up the back stairwell and caught the first deputy at the top. Swept his rifle aside, drove my elbow into his shoulder, and put him on the ground without firing a shot. The second one spun, raising his weapon. Don't, I said. He saw my eyes in the dim glow of his own tack light. Whatever he saw there made him lower the barrel. This isn't what you signed up for, I told him. Grant's using you to cover his crimes. You breach that door, you're part of a felony kidnapping. You walk away, you're just a guy who followed bad orders. He hesitated, then stepped back, headed downstairs. I heard him shout to the others. We're done. Pull out. Now. Downstairs, the remaining deputies were regrouping in the front yard, coughing, disoriented, arguing with each other. Ryder was shouting into his radio. Webb's gone full hostile. We need backup. No, another voice cut him off. It was the deputy I'd let go. He didn't fire a shot. He's not the threat here, man. We're raiding the wrong guy. Grant pushed through the group, face red. Get back in there. For what? Ryder said, yanking off his helmet. He's got the house rigged like a war zone. Half our guys are zip-tied or smoked out. You didn't tell us he was trained. I gave you an order. Yeah, and I'm refusing it, Ryder said. He looked at the others. Anyone else want to throw their career away for this? Because that's what this is. One by one, the deputies backed toward their vehicles. Grant's hands balled into fists. You're all cowards. Maybe, Ryder said. But we're walking out of here employed and alive. The convoy pulled away, leaving Grant standing alone in my driveway, bathed in red taillights. I watched him from the upstairs window. He stood there for a long time, breathing hard, staring at my dark house like it had personally betrayed him. Then he pulled his service weapon and started toward the door. Big mistake. I moved downstairs, silent, positioning myself in the corner of the living room behind an overturned couch. Grant stepped through the open doorway, gun raised, sweeping the room. I know you're here, Webb, he called out. You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a washed-up jarhead who can't let go. I didn't answer. He moved deeper into the house, boots crunching on broken drywall from the breaching charges. Your daughter's a liar, he said. And you? You're a dead man. He turned toward the kitchen. I stepped out behind him. Wrong on both counts. He spun, finger on the trigger. But I was already gone, slipping through the side hallway, out the back door, into the tree line behind the house. Grant fired twice into the dark. The bullets hit nothing but air. He stood there, chest heaving, gun shaking in his hand, surrounded by the wreckage of his own failed raid. Alone, afraid, defeated, and I was already a quarter-mile away, moving through the woods like smoke, heading toward the safe house where Violet was really sleeping, because I'd moved her 3 days ago. Grant raided an empty shell. He just didn't know it yet. While Grant was shooting at shadows in my empty house, I was 3 miles away at the sheriff's station. The building was almost deserted. Every available deputy had been pulled for the raid. Only Paige sat at dispatch, and she'd stepped outside for a cigarette 10 minutes ago. I'd been watching on the security feed I'd hacked 2 weeks prior. I had a 12-minute window, maybe 15 if I was lucky. I moved through the back entrance using a cloned keycard I'd lifted from Ryder's gym bag. No alarms. No resistance. Just empty hallways and the hum of old fluorescent lights. The evidence locker was in the basement. Reinforced door. Keypad lock. Camera above it. I'd already looped the camera footage to show an empty hallway. The keypad took me 40 seconds to crack using a code-breaking device Tristan had shipped me. The door clicked open. Inside, metal shelves stretched wall to wall. Rows of boxes. Tagged evidence. Forgotten cases. Years of this town's dirty secrets packed into a concrete tomb. But I wasn't here for old cases. I was here for the ones that never made it to trial. I found Grant's personal locker in the back corner. No department label. Just a padlock and a duffel bag shoved behind a stack of outdated riot shields. I cut the lock, unzipped the bag, and my stomach turned. Inside were trophies. A hair clip, a student ID, a bracelet, a torn piece of fabric, a phone with a cracked screen. Each item in a separate plastic baggie. Each one labeled with initials and a date. There were 9 bags total. 9 girls. Violet wasn't the first. She wasn't even close. I pulled out my phone and photographed everything. Every angle. Every label. Every sick piece of evidence Grant had kept like some kind of hunter's collection. Then I found the ledger. A small black notebook tucked beneath the bags. Inside were names, dates, locations. Details written in Grant's handwriting. Not official reports. These were personal notes. Descriptions of the girls. What he did. How he threatened them into silence. One entry stopped me cold. Yim, 16, blonde, volleyball. Cried too much. Had to remind her what happens to girls who talk. Daddy's a nobody. She'll stay quiet. My hands tightened on the notebook. This wasn't just assault. This was systematic predation. Grant had been hunting vulnerable girls for years, using his badge as both weapon and shield. And Hunter? His name appeared 3 times in the margins with dollar signs next to them. He wasn't just covering for Grant. He was profiting from the silence. I packed everything into a backpack I'd brought. Every bag, every photo, the ledger, all of it. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. Paige was back inside. I checked my watch. 11 minutes. I'd pushed my luck. I slipped out of the evidence room, relocked the door, and moved through the basement hallway toward the rear exit. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, but then it buzzed again. And again. I ducked into a storage closet and checked the screen. 3 texts from Tristan. Tristan, news just broke. SWAT raid at your house. You okay? Tristan, media's already covering it. Grant's calling you armed and dangerous. Tristan, Mason, answer me. I typed back quickly. Me. I'm fine. Violet's safe. Got what I needed. Sending you files now. I uploaded every photo to the encrypted server, then sent the address to Natalie with a single message. Me. Everything you need. 9 victims. Financial ties to Hunter. Move fast. Her response came in seconds. Natalie, holy hell. This changes everything. I'm filing with the state AG tonight. They'll have no choice but to act. Me. How long until arrests? Natalie, if I push? 48 hours. Maybe less. But Mason, Grant's going to know someone was in that locker. When he finds out what's missing, he'll panic. Me good. I pocketed the phone and slipped out the back door into the pre-dawn darkness. By sunrise, the story was everywhere. Local news picked it up first. SWAT raid goes wrong. Veteran homeowner allegedly defends property. Then the state outlets grabbed it. By noon, it was trending online. The narrative Grant tried to build, dangerous armed man resisting lawful arrest, crumbled under scrutiny. Eyewitness accounts from his own deputies contradicted him. No shots fired by the homeowner. No weapons recovered. Just a chaotic raid that looked more like retaliation than law enforcement. Public opinion started shifting. And then Natalie made her move. At 4 p.m., she held a press conference outside the state attorney general's office. She didn't name names yet, but she didn't have to. We have credible, documented evidence of a pattern of sexual assault and corruption involving law enforcement officials in Harmon County. This evidence includes physical proof, financial records, and eyewitness testimony spanning multiple years. The state has been formally notified, and we expect immediate action. Reporters swarmed her with questions, but she just smiled and said, "Justice doesn't negotiate. It arrives." That night, I sat in the safe house with Violet, watching the news coverage on my laptop. She was curled up on the couch, a blanket around her shoulders. "Is it over?" she asked quietly. "Almost," I said. "What happens to him?" "He loses everything." She nodded slowly. "Then, what happens to us?" I looked at her, really looked at her. The girl who'd been carrying shame that wasn't hers. Who'd been afraid to speak because the man with the badge told her no one would listen. "We get our lives back," I said. "The real ones. Not the ones he tried to take." Her eyes filled, but this time it wasn't fear. It was relief. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then Grant's voice, raw and shaking. "You took it. You took everything. You had no right to keep it," I said calmly. "I'm a dead man," he whispered. "Hunter's cutting me loose. My own deputies won't return my calls. It's over." "Yes, it is. Where's your daughter?" His voice shifted. Darker. Desperate. My blood went cold. "Grant, if I'm going down, I'm taking her with me. You hear me, Webb? I know where she goes to school. I know her friends. I will find her." The line went dead. I stood up, adrenaline spiking. Violet looked at me, eyes wide. "Dad, pack a bag," I said. "Now." Because Grant Holloway wasn't a cop anymore. He was a cornered animal. And cornered animals don't surrender. They attack. The cabin sat 40 miles outside town, buried in pine trees at the end of a dirt road nobody used anymore. Tristan owned it under a shell company. No paper trail. No neighbors. Perfect for disappearing. Violet was inside with a former Marine I trusted, a woman named Eliza who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan and knew how to handle a crisis. I'd called her the second Grant made his threat. Keep her inside, I'd told Eliza. No lights, no phones, and if anyone comes up that road who isn't me, you take her out the back and run. And you? Eliza had asked. I'll be waiting, because I knew Grant would come. Desperate men don't think, they react. And Grant had one card left to play. Revenge. I just had to make sure he played it exactly where I wanted. I'd left a trail. Not obvious, but breadcrumbs a man like Grant could follow if he was motivated enough. A gas station receipt near the county line. A traffic camera ping on a truck matching mine. A burner phone text to Tristan mentioning the cabin that I knew Grant's contact at the cell company would flag. It took him 6 hours. I saw the headlights first, cutting through the trees just after midnight. One vehicle. No backup. He was alone. Good. I'd disabled the cabin's perimeter lights an hour ago. Eliza and Violet were already gone, evacuated through the back trail to a second location 5 miles away. The cabin was empty except for me, and I wasn't hiding. I was sitting in a wooden chair in the center of the main room, hands resting on my knees, waiting in total darkness. Grant's truck skidded to a stop outside. The door slammed. I heard his boots crunching gravel, fast and uneven. He wasn't tactical anymore. He was sloppy, emotional. He kicked the front door open, gun raised, flashlight beam slicing through the room. The beam found me. I didn't move. Where is she? Grant shouted, voice cracking. Gone. You're lying. Search the place if you want, I said calmly. You'll find the same thing you found at my house. Nothing. His hand was shaking. The gun drifted left, then right, like he couldn't decide where to aim. You ruined me, he hissed. I had a life. Respect. Power. You took it all. You took it from yourself the second you touched my daughter. He stepped closer, boots echoing on the wood floor. She was nothing. Just another girl who thought she was special. I've had dozens like her. I know, I said. I found your trophies. His face twisted. You had no right, neither did you. He raised the gun, aiming directly at my chest. I should kill you right now. Then do it. He hesitated. His finger twitched on the trigger, but he didn't pull it. Because deep down he knew. Killing me didn't fix anything. The evidence was already out. Natalie had the files. The state had been notified. Shooting me just added murder to his list. But logic wasn't driving him anymore. Rage was. Stand up, he ordered. I stood slowly, hands still loose at my sides. He moved closer, pressing the barrel against my sternum. You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a killer with a better excuse. Maybe, I said, but I'm the killer standing between you and her. And that's the only thing that matters. His jaw clenched. Then he swung the gun like a club, trying to crack me across the face. I moved, slipped inside his arc, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. The gun clattered to the floor. He tried to throw a punch. I blocked it, drove my palm into his shoulder, and shoved him backward into the wall. He came at me again, wild and desperate. But desperation doesn't beat training. I ducked his swing, swept his leg, and put him on the ground. He scrambled for the gun. I kicked it away, grabbed him by the collar, and slammed him back down. Stay down. He didn't. He lunged again, catching me around the waist. We crashed into the table, wood splintering. He got one good hit in, a fist to my ribs that knocked the air out of me. But pain is just information. I drove my elbow into his collarbone. He gasped. I rolled him onto his stomach, wrenched his arm behind his back, and pressed my knee into his spine. He was done. Let me go, he wheezed. No. Please, did they say please? I asked quietly. The girls you hurt. Did you listen when they begged? He went silent. I leaned down close to his ear. Mercy is for the courts, I said. I'm just the delivery service. 15 minutes later, headlights appeared through the trees. Multiple vehicles. Sirens. I'd called them before Grant even arrived. State police. Federal agents. Natalie in the lead car. They found Grant zip-tied on the cabin floor, alive, conscious, and completely defeated. An agent pulled me aside. You okay? Fine. He came at you? He did. Good, the agent said. Makes this easy. They dragged Grant out in cuffs. He didn't fight, didn't speak, just stared at the ground like a man who'd already accepted he was finished. Natalie walked up, arms crossed. You couldn't wait 48 hours? He threatened Violet. She sighed. Well, at least you didn't kill him. Thought about it. I know you did, she said. But you didn't. That's what matters. I watched them load Grant into the back of a cruiser. The door slammed shut. Red and blue lights painted the trees. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight start to lift. Not all of it. Not yet. But enough to breathe. The courtroom was packed. I sat in the back row, watching as they led Grant Holloway to the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit and chains. His shoulders sagged. His eyes were hollow. The man who'd once walked through this town like he owned it now shuffled like a ghost. Beside me, Violet sat with her hands folded in her lap. She'd asked to come. I tried to talk her out of it, but she'd been firm. I need to see it, she'd said. I need to see him answer for what he did. So here we were. Natalie stood at the prosecution table, sharp and unshakable. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd built a case so airtight that even Grant's high-priced lawyer couldn't find a crack. 9 victims had come forward after the evidence went public. 9 girls who'd been too afraid to speak before, but found their voices when they realized they weren't alone. Violet was one of them. She'd given her testimony 2 days ago. Calm, clear, unflinching. I'd sat in the gallery and watched my daughter take back the power he'd stolen from her, one word at a time. And when the defense attorney tried to discredit her, Natalie had destroyed him with the physical evidence, the ledger, the trophies, and the financial records tying Grant to Hunter Boone's protection racket. There was no escape, no technicality, no favor left to call in. Grant Holloway was finished. The judge read the verdict without emotion. On all counts of sexual assault, guilty. On charges of evidence tampering, guilty. On charges of racketeering and abuse of power, guilty. The room erupted. Some people cheered. Others wept. Violet squeezed my hand so hard I thought she might break it. The judge slammed the gavel. Sentencing is as follows. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Grant's head dropped. His lawyer said something, but Grant didn't respond. He just sat there, a broken man in chains, knowing he'd spend the rest of his life in a cell surrounded by the very people he used to arrest. And in prison, former cops don't get mercy. Justice doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it wears an inmate number. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Natalie. She fielded their questions with practiced ease, making sure the focus stayed on the victims, not the spectacle. Violet and I slipped out the side entrance, avoiding the cameras. We walked to the truck in silence. She climbed in, buckled her seatbelt, and stared out the window. You okay? I asked. She nodded, then shook her head, then laughed, a choked, fragile sound. I don't know what I am. That's okay. Is it? She looked at me, eyes red. I thought I'd feel, I don't know, victorious? Like some kind of superhero after the final battle. But I just feel tired. That's because you've been carrying a mountain, I said. And you just set it down. Your body doesn't know what to do without the weight yet. She wiped her eyes. Will it get easier? Yeah, I said. Not today. Not tomorrow. But eventually, you'll wake up and realize you went a whole hour without thinking about him. Then a whole day. Then a week. And one morning, you'll remember what it felt like to be you before any of this happened. And you? She asked. Will you be okay? I started the engine. I'll be okay when you are. She reached over and squeezed my hand again. This time softer. Thank you, Dad, she whispered, for not letting him win. Hunter Boone was arrested the same week. Federal charges. Corruption. Racketeering. Conspiracy. The dominoes fell fast once Grant started talking, trying to cut a deal that didn't exist. By the time the dust settled, half the county government had either resigned or been indicted. The town I'd lived in quietly for 8 years was unrecognizable, but it was cleaner. And the people who'd been too afraid to speak before, they started finding their voices. 3 weeks after the sentencing, I was back under the hood of a car in my rebuilt shop. New walls, new paint, same tools. Violet walked in after school, backpack slung over one shoulder. She looked lighter. Not healed, not yet, but lighter. "Dad, I got accepted," she said, holding up an envelope. I wiped my hands. "To where?" "State University. Full ride. Volleyball scholarship." A smile cracked across my face. "Vi, that's incredible." She grinned. "I know, right? Coach said I've got a real shot at starting lineup." "You've always had it." She walked over and hugged me, grease-stained shirt and all. "I'm proud of you," I said quietly. "I'm proud of us," she replied. That night, I sat on the porch as the sun set over the hills. My phone buzzed. A message from Natalie. "Natalie, final tally, 14 arrests, 22 charges, 9 victims compensated. Not bad for a mechanic and a lawyer." "Me, you did the heavy lifting." "Natalie, you brought me the fight. I just finished it." I set the phone down and stared at the horizon. Somewhere out there, Grant Holloway was in a cell, counting the days he'd never get back. Hunter Boone was facing 20 years in federal prison, and my daughter was planning for college. The ghost in me, the part that lived in shadows and calculated kill zones, could finally rest. Because sometimes the mission isn't about the takedown. It's about making sure the people you love get to live without fear. Before you go, I need to ask you something. What did this story make you feel? Drop it in the comments. I really want to know. And tell me, where are you watching from? Your city, your country, comment below. It means everything to know this story reached you. If this hit you the way it hit me writing it, hit that like button and subscribe. There are more stories like this coming. More betrayals, more justice, more epic revenge, and I don't want you to miss a single one. But here's the real question. What kind of stories do you want next? Military revenge? Family betrayal? Cheating spouse justice? Corporate takedowns? Tell me in the comments what gets your heart racing, and I'll bring you exactly that. This is just one chapter closed. There are so many more battles to fight, so many more ghosts waiting in the shadows. I'll see you in the next thriller, the next epic revenge story. Until then, take care of yourself and the people you love. Because in the end, that's what all of this is really about. Story finished.